Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation in West Africa, found itself grappling with a devastating crisis in the years leading up to 2022. Jihadist violence, like a raging inferno, had engulfed the nation, leaving a trail of death and displacement in its wake. Groups with links to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State launched frequent attacks, targeting civilians and security forces alike. The once peaceful countryside was now scarred by fear, with villages deserted and fields left untended. The government seemed powerless to stop the bloodshed, its authority waning as the jihadists tightened their grip. The violence had a devastating impact on Burkina Faso's already fragile economy. Farmers were driven from their lands, leading to food shortages and soaring prices. Schools were closed, robbing children of their education. The healthcare system, already stretched thin, struggled to cope with the influx of wounded. The crisis had pushed Burkina Faso to the brink, its people yearning for a solution, for a leader who could restore peace and security. Amidst this backdrop of despair and uncertainty, a young military officer named Ibrahim Traoré emerged from the shadows. Captain Traoré, a veteran of the fight against the jihadists, shared the growing frustration within the military over the government's inability to combat the insurgency. He believed that the leadership was out of touch, more concerned with maintaining power than protecting its citizens. This discontent, fueled by the escalating violence and the palpable sense of despair, would ultimately pave the way for a dramatic shift in power. On September 30th, 2022, the world watched as Burkina Faso was shaken by its second coup d'etat in a year. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a relatively unknown figure at the time, led a group of soldiers to seize control of the government. They detained President Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, himself brought to power by a coup just 8 months prior. Traoré justified his actions, declaring on national television that Damiba had failed to address the deteriorating security situation. He accused the former president of being out of touch with the reality on the ground and prioritizing his own interests over the needs of the nation. The coup, Traoré proclaimed, was a necessary step to refocus efforts on combating the jihadist insurgency and restoring stability to Burkina Faso. The international community reacted with condemnation, denouncing the coup as unconstitutional and calling for a return to democratic rule. The African Union and the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, suspended Burkina Faso's membership, demanding a swift return to civilian governance. However, within Burkina Faso, reactions were more nuanced. While some condemned the coup as a setback for democracy, others, weary of the relentless violence, saw Traoré as a potential savior. They hoped that his military experience and hardline stance against the jihadists would bring an end to the bloodshed. In the months following the coup, Traoré consolidated his power, appointing a new government and promising to prioritize the fight against terrorism. He launched a series of military offensives against jihadist strongholds, deploying troops to areas hardest hit by the insurgency. The government also sought to bolster the country's defenses, investing in new equipment and training for the armed forces. However, Traoré's tenure has been marred by accusations of human rights abuses and a crackdown on dissent. His government has been accused of extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrests, and enforced disappearances, targeting both civilians and military personnel suspected of opposing the regime. Journalists and activists critical of the junta have faced intimidation, arrest, and even violence. Traoré's government has defended its actions as necessary measures to combat the insurgency and maintain order. Adding fuel to the fire, Traoré has repeatedly accused neighboring Ivory Coast of harboring his opponents and supporting efforts to destabilize Burkina Faso. He has claimed that Ivory Coast serves as a base for plotting against his government and has even accused Ivorian officials of complicity in coup attempts. These accusations have strained relations between the two countries, raising tensions in the region. Burkina Faso's uncertain future hangs in the balance, as its people grapple with the consequences of ongoing conflict and political upheaval. The choices made in the coming months will determine whether the nation moves toward peace and stability or slips further into chaos and despair.